They woke to the house breathing the way it always did, pipes ticking as they cooled, the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the old floorboards answering the weight of the air with soft, patient creaks. It was still dark, that thin hour before morning when night hasn't decided to leave yet. The hallway light was off. The walls held their shadows close. That was when she noticed the photos. They lined the corridor between the bedrooms and the stairs, a gallery of moments she could walk past with her eyes closed. Birthdays, graduations, a wedding photo taken in bad sunlight, the kids missing teeth and grinning too hard. The frames were simple wood and brushed metal, hung at careful, habitual angles. She had measured them herself. Now they were wrong. She stood barefoot on the cool hardwood, one hand braced against the wall, and stared. The frames were still there. The spacing hadn't changed, but the faces inside them had. At first, her mind refused to accept it. Sleep did that, made familiar things slippery. She leaned closer, the glass reflecting a dim, warped version of her own face over the images. The wedding photo showed her in a white dress beside a man she had never seen before. He stood too close, his hand resting on her waist with an intimacy that made her stomach tighten. His smile was subtle, knowing. His eyes were slightly out of focus, as if the camera hadn't quite caught up with him. The next frame, her daughter at 6, missing 2 front teeth, still showed a child at that age in the same pink dress standing in the same backyard. But the girl's face wasn't her daughter's. The eyes were wrong, too close together. The smile stretched a fraction too wide, teeth too adult. She stepped back, heart beginning to thud. The hallway felt longer than it should have. The silence thickened, pressing against her ears until she noticed her own breathing shallow, uneven. Somewhere upstairs, a vent sighed. She moved from frame to frame, dread building with each step. A family vacation photo now included 3 people she didn't recognize, standing where her parents should have been. A Christmas portrait showed a boy in her son's place, same height, same haircut, but with a different jawline, different eyes that seemed to follow her as she moved. Her reflection slid across the glass as she passed, overlapping the unfamiliar faces. For a moment, it looked like she was standing among them. "No," she whispered, the word barely disturbing the air. She reached out and touched one of the frames. It was cold, the glass smooth under her fingers. The photo inside didn't shift, didn't flicker back to what it should be. Behind her, the floor creaked. She spun around. The hallway was empty. The shadows lay exactly where they always did, pooled beneath the console table, stretching thin beneath the closed bathroom door. The front door was still locked. She could see the deadbolt catching a sliver of dim light. She told herself it had to be a prank, a mistake, some elaborate, impossible error of memory. But the weight in her chest said otherwise. She continued down the hall, every step deliberate, as if the house might react to sudden movement. As she passed the final frame, she froze. It was a photo she didn't remember hanging. The frame matched the others, same brushed metal, but the image inside was unfamiliar. It showed the hallway itself, the same walls, the same photos, taken from the bottom of the stairs, angled upward. In the picture, a woman stood in the hall barefoot, hand pressed to the wall. She was wearing the same pajamas. Her hair fell the same way over her shoulder. But her face wasn't right. The eyes were wrong, too dark, reflecting light that didn't exist. The mouth curved into a faint, anticipatory smile. The sound she made stuck in her throat. She backed away slowly, bumping into the console table. Something on it rattled, a bowl of keys slightly out of place as if recently handled. She hadn't touched them. The house seemed to notice her then. A faint click came from the kitchen, like a cabinet settling. Somewhere upstairs, a door whispered as it moved, just enough to change the line of shadow beneath it. She turned and walked, then hurried, toward the living room, needing space, needing light. She flipped on the lamp by the couch. The bulb flickered once before settling into a low, warm glow that did nothing to banish the corners. The family photo wall there had changed too. Larger frames this time, portraits she remembered posing for. Only now, Unfamiliar faces stared back at her from every angle. They shared her features in distorted ways. A familiar nose paired with someone else's eyes, her smile reshaped, redistributed among strangers. She realized, with a slow, sick certainty, that none of the photos showed the same unfamiliar person twice. They were all different. The couch cushions bore slight impressions, as if someone had been sitting there recently. The coffee table had a faint smear across its surface, like a handprint wiped away. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She hadn't realized she was holding it. A notification blinked on the screen. Photos updated. Her pulse roared in her ears. She swiped to open her gallery. The most recent image filled the screen. It was a photo of the hallway, taken from the top of the stairs. In the image, she stood below, staring at the wall of frames. Behind her, reflected faintly in the glass, were several unfamiliar faces, watching her back. She dropped the phone. Somewhere in the house, a frame shifted on its hook. And down the hallway, a new photograph slid neatly into place, its glass catching the light as it settled, ready to be remembered. She saw someone run past the window, but the yard was empty. It was just after midnight. The house was quiet, save for the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the soft ticking of the hallway clock. The moon cast pale light through the blinds, and the curtains swayed gently, though no breeze had passed through the room. Sitting on the couch, Claire thought she'd imagined it at first. A flash, a movement at the edge of her vision. She had been sipping her tea, half asleep, staring at the muted glow of the television. The figure had been fast, almost a blur, barely more than a shadow. She froze, the mug halfway to her lips. The yard was empty. She pressed her forehead to the glass, the chill biting through her sweater. The lawn stretched outward in silver light, the bushes standing rigid, the trees unmoving. Not a single branch trembled. Not a single leaf quivered. The gravel walkway, illuminated by the porch light, lay smooth and undisturbed. And yet, she was certain, someone had run past. Her pulse quickened. She lowered herself to the floor, moving closer to the window, peering into the reflection of the room behind her. The living room was still, the TV dim, the shadows of furniture stretching unnaturally across the hardwood. Nothing in the reflection moved, except her own hands, pressed lightly to the glass. She whispered, "Hello." No answer. The clock ticked, louder than before, almost accusatory. Claire's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She reached for it, trembling. The screen was blank except for a single notification. Motion detected outside. She hadn't set up cameras. She hadn't installed anything. The hair on her neck stood on end. She moved to the door, checking locks and deadbolts, all intact. She touched the doorknob, cold metal, heavy, unyielding. Nothing had been disturbed, nothing broken. But a subtle shift caught her eye. The welcome mat, which she remembered flat against the porch, was slightly angled, its fibers compressed as if someone had stepped on it, but she knew she hadn't. She pulled the blinds apart slowly, inch by inch, scanning the yard. Gravel lay still. The hedges were untouched. The streetlight cast long, skeletal shadows across the lawn. Nothing. Claire's mind tried to rationalize. An animal, a neighbor walking past, a trick of light. But her chest knew better. That figure had been human, tall, thin, running with an unnatural urgency. The shape had moved with purpose. She exhaled shakily, trying to calm herself. "I'm just imagining things," she muttered. She returned to the couch, still uneasy. As she sat, she noticed the reflection in the window again. Something was off. A shadow shifted in the living room. Not her own. She froze. It was subtle. A movement against the floor lamp, stretching across the carpet. The couch cushions hadn't moved. Nothing should have moved. Her eyes darted around the room. Empty. Yet the reflection told a different story. Something crouched near the hallway. Something watching. Claire dropped her gaze to the window itself. Outside, the yard remained unnervingly still. The gravel, the bushes, the lawn, all perfectly undisturbed. The motion she had seen earlier could not have left a mark. It was as though the figure existed in the corner of her vision but not in the physical world, or perhaps in some space slightly out of phase with her own. A cold draft brushed past her arm. She looked around. The windows were closed. The TV flickered. Shadows in the corners of the room lengthened toward the hall, as if drawn to something just beyond her sight. She noticed a slight smudge on the glass of the front window. A handprint, barely noticeable, smeared into the pane, wiped partially but still visible against the moonlight. Her breath caught. She hadn't touched the window since sitting down. She moved toward the kitchen, hoping to reach the porch light switch to illuminate the yard fully. The floorboards creaked under her feet, oddly louder than usual. She stepped lightly, straining her ears for any other sound. Nothing. At the kitchen doorway, she froze again. The sliding glass door to the backyard. She remembered locking it. Deadbolt engaged. Yet the latch was slightly off, as if someone had tried it. The glass was unbroken, but cold to the touch in a way that didn't match the rest of the house. Heart hammering, she considered calling 911, but the idea felt insufficient. The figure wasn't outside in a traditional sense. It had passed by, vanished, left traces of presence without substance. Claire backed away, heading to the living room again. She scanned the reflections. The hallway behind the couch appeared longer than it should, stretching unnaturally into darkness. Shadows pooled along the wall. Something crouched at the far end. The shape was human enough to recognize, arms and legs, torso, but wrong. Too elongated. Too still. Then the figure outside appeared again, briefly, in the window. She jerked her head around. Nothing. The yard remained pristine, the porch light casting even illumination. No movement. Her reflection in the window betrayed her panic. The figure behind her, now mirrored perfectly, only slightly out of sync, crouched low and smiling faintly. She spun, searching the living room. Empty. A sudden sound from upstairs, like footsteps, light and measured, moving slowly toward her bedroom. She hadn't gone upstairs. Claire's mind raced. Every rational explanation evaporated in the oppressive quiet. The house felt alive, aware. The window, the reflections, the porch, the hallway, they were not separate. They were a single space, warped, bending around some presence she couldn't see directly. The lights flickered. One bulb went out, leaving the living room in a dim half-glow. In the partial reflection of the lamp, she saw the figure again, standing outside the sliding glass door. Still, watching, smiling. But every time she blinked, it vanished. The refrigerator clicked. A vent sighed. The house exhaled. Claire moved backward, toward the hallway. Each step was measured, deliberate, as if sound could summon it closer. At the stairwell, she froze. The light above cast a long shadow down the steps. A shadow that wasn't hers. It moved just enough to mimic her breathing. The window in the hall reflected the backyard. Empty, quiet, still. But in the glass behind her, she saw it, leaning from the top of the stairs. Just a silhouette, dark and human-shaped, elongated and slightly wrong. Arms hanging too long. Head tilted at an impossible angle. Watching her. Her own reflection blinked. The figure in the reflection did not. A whisper. Faint, raspy, like whined through the eaves, but intelligible. Come outside. Claire's hands shook. She stumbled backward. Her reflection, her doubled self, backed away too. But the figure mirrored her movements perfectly. A heartbeat late, an echo in flesh. The porch light flickered again. The backyard remained empty. She reached the living room. Her reflection in the front window froze completely. The figure stood directly behind her in the mirrored glass. No movement, no breath, just a presence impossibly tall, impossibly still, smiling faintly, watching. The clock ticked. The house sighed. And somewhere, in a space just outside sight, the yard waited. For her.